Today we're going to look at some elements of the Death card. And this is also my series experimenting with different ways to video all of this. I'm Linda Burnett, and my area is bringing Torah interpretations into Tarot. So for this series, I'm just going to bring out a couple of elements of different cards that I find really interesting and play with different ways I can do these videos. So first here, this is a Death card, one of the most misunderstood cards of the deck, and one that if it's your first time receiving a tarot reading can be a little nerve-wracking if you pull this card. So the first thing I always like to tell clients, especially if it's their first tarot reading, is that don't worry, because the Death card does not mean death. Lesson number one, the Death card means transformation. Transformation can mean any number of things, but it's a big deal. That's why it's a major arcana card. And the Death card, well, it can be a difficult card. Transformation, change is not always easy, and it's definitely not something that we all enjoy. However, like all of the tarot cards, especially the more difficult ones, the way through that difficult energy is embedded in the card itself. Arthur E. Waite and the amazing artist Pamela Coleman Smith did a beautiful job bringing those elements into this deck. And that's what I want to go over today, some of the elements. So, pardon me as this gets a little wonky. The Death card, the figure of the skeleton, the knight riding the white horse of purity. And the interesting part really about transformation is how do we handle it? How do we walk that path? Some ways we walk that path can be destructive and difficult, and others can be a little more palatable. The four figures at the bottom show us the different ways that we can interact with the intense transformation that the Death card represents. So first, let's look at this first figure. Sorry if it's shaking a little bit. Here we have a monarch. An emperor. Let's stick with the cast of the tarot deck. And the crown on the ground, the figure collapsed, possibly dead or unconscious. The emperor represents power. When an intense transformation happens, the type of transformation that the Death card represents, sometimes we try to control it, we try to manage it, we try to deny it or say, no, you're not happening, I refuse to accept you. We try to embrace some of the more difficult sides of the Emperor card by having it our way and deciding that we are just not going to accept this reality and we are going to say no. And in this kind of transformation, that energy doesn't work. The transformations that come with the Death card are going to happen, which is what the horse here shows. The horse, it's a very large horse. Look at how large that horse is, carrying the death energy, is going to proceed forward right over top of all of these cast of characters. It can't be stopped. All it can be done is to engage with it in a way that is the most healthy way possible. And trying to have power over it is not going to work. That doesn't mean there aren't things can be done. It just means we can't muscle our way into making it change. Now let's look at another figure here. A bishop, a pope, similar to maybe the Hierophant of the tarot deck, trying to plead with the figure, trying to pray or trying to plead their way through. Prayer can definitely be helpful, connecting with spirit, but in this way, trying to bargain, trying to plead and entreat the transformation not to happen. And that doesn't work. If you look, the direction of the horse is going to go right over top of that figure. Now we have another tried and true, denial. This just isn't happening. I turn my head, I refuse to look at it, I refuse to engage the transformation. This is not happening. Now, denial is not a bad thing, especially at the beginning. It's one of the processes of dealing with grief, and all transformations have some sort of grief associated with it. But we have to come out of that and eventually accept and face head on what is happening. to stay in a realm of denial, of avoidance, of I'm just not going to deal with it, can be one of the most difficult ways of handling a transformation of all of them. Namely, because you don't see it coming, you don't know what's going to happen, and you've simply released yourself of all power. How can you have any kind of power with this transformation if you refuse to look at it? And then we get this figure, the child. The child is looking straight at the death figure. The child is not trying to fight it. It's not trying to plead with it. It's simply looking at it, watching, in almost a state of acceptance. Now, acceptance doesn't mean you don't do anything. Acceptance doesn't mean you don't try to navigate your way through this kind of transformation in the most empowering way possible. It simply means that you take life on life's terms and you work with it. And look, the horse is going to step right over the child, not run into it, not step on it, but simply step over and move through, leaving the child unharmed. Because when we can step into that state of acceptance, then we have maneuvering room. Then we can make decisions that empower us, that help us best navigate the transformation that the death card represents. Can't do that if we're trying to power our way through, plead our way through, avoid our way through. We can only do that by staring at it dead in the eye, accepting it, and then making the conscious choices in alignment with spirit to decide what we do next. And when we can do that, the transformation card of death can be incredibly, incredibly empowering and freeing. Doesn't have to be scary at all. All right, that's it for today. Feel free to leave any comments. If anybody even sees this video, I doubt you will, but that's okay too. Have a wonderful day, and may all your transformations happen with grace and with you connecting with spirit to travel along the way.